Welcome back to Python Bytes, Lesson 3. Today we'll be talking about idle, introducing the shell window, and writing our first line of code. The learning outcomes for today's lesson are: we will introduce idle and two different ways of entering code in Python. We will explore the shell window. We will type and run our first line of code, and we'll explore some common bugs or errors that you might encounter when you first start coding. Our first point to learn is, what is idle? Idle is Python's integrated development and learning environment. To put it a little bit simpler, in practical terms, we can think of idle as the place where we type our code. Now, the name sounds a little bit funny to a lot of people, a little unusual. However, if you are a British person and over 40, it probably makes a little bit more sense. Like many things in Python, idle is seemingly named after part of Monty Python's Flying Circus, a TV comedy show. In particular, idle is in honor of Eric Idle, one of the important actors in the series. Idle is coded 100% in pure Python coding language. It's a cross-platform. That means it works largely the same on Windows, Unix, and Mac OS. Python has two main types of input windows. The first one is a shell window, and that's what we're going to focus on for the rest of this lesson. And the second one is a text editor, which is used for more complex code and programming. We'll talk about that in a subsequent lecture. Python has a range of capabilities integrated into idle, such as searching, debugging, configurations, etc., etc. We don't need to worry too much about them at this point, and we'll cover them all in later lessons. Okay, let's have a look at our shell window. We can open our shell window by clicking on the search bar, typing idle, and there we go. We open up a shell window. If we have a look at the top, it tells you the version of Python that we're using. I'm using 3.9.1, and it also talks about the operating system. I'm using Windows operating system. We have a set of menus at the top. File menu, it's just the usual types of things: opening, closing, saving. Edit menu, undo, copying, finding and searching. The shell menu, debug menu, options, how we configure idle, a Windows menu telling me what version we're at, and a set of help files. We'll cover lots of these different menu items in other lessons. Also to note here, we have these three chevrons, and blinking away after those chevrons is our cursor. And this is where we write our code in idle shell window. So we can simply write our code here, just as we would type anything else with our computer. If we press enter, our code is run, and we find out if everything is correct. It works as expected. If it's not correct, we get an error message, and that tells us some information about what's wrong with the code. It's a very good place to run simple code, to test out small pieces of code before entering them into a larger block of code, which we'll typically use the editor for. Now let's have a look at our first line of code. If we click our cursor just after these three chevrons, this is where we can start typing. Simple code, we could type something along the lines of print brackets, comma, I love snakes. Oops. I love snakes, and then we can hit enter to run our code. And our computer shell window prints out I love snakes. Our very first line of code completed successfully. Now we can make a lot of mistakes when we're typing our code, so we have to be pretty careful. Some of the most common mistakes when we're getting started. In English, for example, we might type print with a capital P, and we could copy and paste the rest, and then if we hit enter now, we would get an error message. Because case is important in Python, we need to write P lowercase before we type in the rest. Other common mistakes might be, let's copy this line of code and paste. We could, for example, miss out a quotation mark and then would get a syntax error. It means we've written something in the wrong order or we've missed something out. Another common way might be to miss out the brackets. That would get a similar syntax error message. So there are some common mistakes that you might get when you first start typing your first few lines of code. Have a go, try it out. The text in green here can say anything you want, and Python will print it out for you. Okay, that's all we have time for today. I look forward to seeing you in the next Python Bytes lesson.